Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation, and I have got the Parish of Rock back to the channel. How are you, mate?
I'm very good, Peter. Thanks for having me back on. Really looking forward to this. One of my favourite bands. So, yeah, really good.
Absolutely. We are going to talk about the classic Whitesnake lineup of Whitesnake, Ready and Willing in a ding-dong album battle against Whitesnake, Come and Get It. So basically, Ready and Willing came out in 1980. That was the commercial breakthrough album. Hit the UK top 10, went number 7, propelled by the single Fool for Your Lovin'. And then Come and Get It did even better in the charts, hit number 2, and came out in 1981, propelled by the hit single Don't Break My Heart Again. So we're going to do an album battle, as we normally do, track by track analysis. So just a little bit of admin, Parish. The classic lineup of Whitesnake was David Coverdale on vocals, John Lord on keyboards, Bernie Marsden on guitar, Mickey Moody on guitars, Neil Murray on bass, and last but not least, the great Ian Paice on drums. So to many folk, this is the quintessential Whitesnake lineup. They were together over 3 albums. They did one more, which was Saints and Sinners. And then there were multiple lineup changes, and Whitesnake changed forever. There you have it. So what we'll do, we'll start off with Ready and Willing and go track by track. Here's the album cover. So a little bit of an interesting story. Ian Paice was like a little bit of an addition. This is all a photo, but an artist did an artist's impression of Ian Paice. So this is not actually his photo. So it was a bit of a botch job, bit of a silhouette. I don't know if it's the greatest album cover anyway, but it's effective. And there you have it. And it was on the Mirage label, which was an offshoot of the Atlantic Warners. There's the inner sleeve. We've got photos of them. So did you get this album in the day, Parish?
Yes, I did, Peter. And I went looking for it because unlike the other albums that we've done up till now, these are 2 albums I play regularly. And whilst I could find my battered copy of Come and Get It, I couldn't find my battered copy of Ready and Willing. I'll probably find it when I look for something else, because that's often how it goes. But it wasn't where it was supposed to be. So yeah, I did get it. I've still got it. I mean, the album cover's interesting because apparently David Coverdale designed the album cover. So maybe you should have stuck to singing, in my view. But anyway, I do wonder that with all the sort of controversy that was on Love Hunter and then later would Come and Get It, maybe they were trying to just find an album cover that wasn't going to upset anybody.
Yeah, a little bit more of a sober choice.
Yeah,
and, you know, wanting to break through into America, because I think they did do a tour of some sorts off the back of this album.
So this was basically my entry point to Whitesnake. So back in 1980, I was big on the new wave of British heavy metal. Prior to that, I'd been into punk and new wave. And I had no interest at all in what I would have considered the dinosaurs of rock, those bands from the early 70s, or even, you know, the people who'd been in those bands. So whether it was Rainbow or whether it was Whitesnake or Gillan or anybody like that, I had no interest at all. But I had a friend at work, Stuart, who was not particularly a rock fan, but for some reason was a huge Whitesnake fan. And he dragged me along to see them at Hammersmith Odeon in 1980. And I was just blown away. I mean, it was one of the best concerts I'd been to at that point. And up at that point, I'd seen AC/DC, I'd seen UFO, I'd seen Priest. So, you know, I'd seen most of the big guns, as well as Def Leppard, Iron Maiden, Saxon, Motorhead. So, and yet Whitesnake just blew me away. And even though I wasn't particularly familiar with the songs before I went in, they were just stuck in my head for days afterwards, even just on the one listen from the from the concert. So I went out and got the album, loved the album, went back and got the previous albums, went back, kind of heresy really for me, but went back and bought Deep Purple album in Bern. And I've loved David Coverdale ever since, and Whitesnake ever since, and remains one of my favourite bands of all time. He remains definitely a top 5 singer for me, and top 5 frontman as well. I mean, he's such a brilliant frontman. And what's kind of overlooked, I think, of this era is Mickey Moody and Bernie Marsden are clearly excellent musicians. But actually, one of the things I was really impressed by them was their stage presence. They were not typical rock stars on stage. They weren't throwing those sort of guitar hero shapes, but they had a charisma and a image on stage that was brilliant and just worked really well with David Coverdale. So Mickey Moody used to wear this big hat and was almost hunched over his guitar, just walking around playing. And Bernie Marsden was the other side of the stage, big grin on his face, playing, really enjoying it. And actually, as live guitarists, they just came across really well as well. And most people think of Whitesnake as Coverdale, really, particularly because of what happened later. But they were, to me, they were as important or as instrumental in that Whitesnake look as well as the sound, but in that look as Coverdale was, and was part of the charisma and chemistry of what was going on stage. And then, of course, you've got in Neil Murray and Ian Pace and John Lord. You've just got 3 classics, haven't you? You've just got 3 hyper professionals who just knew what they were doing. So that's kind of my background to the album, and was, as I say, my entry point into Whitesnake.
Yeah, and also Moody and Marsden were very capable backup singers, and that's the thing that adds a lot of texture to these 2 albums, is the backup singing. It's not just Coverdale; it's providing support, but
and good songwriters. I mean, particularly on this album, the co-written songs are that they're involved in are, I think, the better songs. So they certainly bring something on the songwriting as well, I think.
Yeah, why don't we have a little bit of a spotlight into the songs? So starting off with Fool for Your Loving. So this was the breakthrough. It starts off with the John Lord Hammond organ chords. Then you've got this pacey swing. It's you know straight away it's Ian Pace, because it's just got that boom, chicka boom, that real swinging sort of drum pattern. You know, the band are all firing. It's got a very infectious melody, and it's a lyric that David Coverdale has used, so many times. But it's not it doesn't sound like a cliche in this song, where it's a love gone wrong and he's a fool for your loving. It's just the blues. It's a blues theme. What do you think of this song?
I think it's one of the best album openers of all time. I just think it's brilliant. I mean, you've got that bit of feedback at the beginning, and then Coverdale comes in with that yeah. And then he's got one of the best opening lines of a song, in my view, as well, with I was born under a bad sign, left out in the cold. I just love that lyric. So yeah, fantastic song, and just sets up the album really well, doesn't it? I mean, you can see why it was a hit back in 1980, and it's still in the set now. Well, if up until recently, it was still in the set, wasn't it? It was one of the classic Whitesnake songs. So yeah, brilliant.
Did that get a lot of radio airplay in your memory? Because it did chart. Did it? Mainstream radio play this a bit?
1980, late 79 through to about late 81. Heavy rock was getting commercial heavy rock was getting quite a bit of airplay. So I think they don't get a lot of credit for it, really, but there was 2 bands that kicked off the radio airplay in the UK. One was Rainbow with Since You've Been Gone.
And All Night Long. Yeah.
And then All Night Long, but Since You've Been Gone. And that was the first time that heavy rock or heavy rock bands broke into mainstream radio, because up till then it was either disco or pop or new wave. And then the other band that did well was Judas Priest. So Judas Priest would have songs like Take on the World or United. But the one that seemed to really open the door was either, and I can't remember which way round it was either Living After Midnight or Breaking the Law. And I can't remember which one came. But that pair, a bit like you said with the Rainbow pair, was what opened the door for heavy rock being played on UK sort of Radio 1 and Capital Radio, etc. So as a result of that, if you had a good commercial single, it would get radio airplay. It would go on the playlists, and Fall for Your Loving was definitely that sort of commercial heavy rock, and therefore got onto the radio.
Yeah, it's a solid gold classic. It's top 5.
Yeah.
Whitesnake easily. All right. The next song is Sweet Talker. In my opinion, it's a great song, but it's slightly let down by the lyrics, the bitches on heat. To me, that sort of jars a little bit in 2025. But if you take that aside and you can forgive it, it's a cracker of a song. What do you think of this?
Well, I think it's got a great riff. I think it's a good boogie song, isn't it? It's sort of driven along by that boogie riff. I think his vocals are good. I love the chorus. But I mean, you say the lyrics don't stand up in sort of 2025 ears, but the truth is, the press, such as NME and even Sounds, would had it in for Coverdale, because he was, even back in 1980, he was seen as a sexist dinosaur.
I know.
And the thing they would home in on is his lyrics. And what was fascinating to me is you'd have all these guys in the press tearing into Whitesnake about, as I say, sort of misogynistic lyrics and sexist and dinosaurs. And back in those days, if you went to a rock concert, so whether that be Priest or UFO or AC/DC, in the UK, if you went to a rock concert, I would say 95 to 100% of the audience were men or boys in their leather jackets and their denims. Whitesnake was nearly 50-50 men and women. So you've got all this press saying David Coverdale and Whitesnake were sexist and misogynistic, and yet the women didn't seem to think that the audience was almost half women, and they loved him and they loved the lyrics. So it was kind of weird seeing that contrast between the snooty press and the reaction of the audience, really.
Yeah,
and he almost had a Tom Jones type image. I mean, I remember seeing him at a concert, and the women were chucking their underwear on stage. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, he certainly has changed. Like, even his speaking voice, he didn't have that sort of deep Richard Burton, Roger Moore vocal inflection that he had. He was a little bit more of, just a northerner. So that's something that he's refined over time. But getting back to this song, I think it's almost like a reflex action, that there are sometimes he throws a line in the lyric as a bit of a finger in the air of defiance against, all right, well, this is what you expect me to sing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Here it is. And there's more on Come and Get It. And it is more and more blatantly obvious when you get deeper into the 80s with like Slide It In, where it's just completely crass and just.
Well, we mentioned it earlier, but some of the album covers don't help either, do they? Let's be honest.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But I like this song. Lyrics,
it's a good
little bit of it's a bit of a blemish, but it's got a cowbell, it's got a bit of groove. And it swings. It's a great
a single. I mean, I don't think it charted, but it was actually released as a single, because it is it's got a great chorus. I think it's quite a commercial chorus, so I can see why it was picked as a single.
Now, the next track, Ready and Willing, I really like this one. This really kind of a little bit funky and bluesy at the same time. And this was a staple of their live set. What do you think of this one? Bit of a call and response.
Another classic. I mean,
a call and response between the audience and the band.
Yeah. Yeah, another classic Whitesnake song. Another reason why I keep coming back to the album. As you say, mainstay in the set. I mean, I find it difficult preparing for today because I know these songs so well. It's hard to be critical or put a critique to them. And so on some of these, all I've written down is another classic, great guitars, fantastic vocals. That's all I can say, really.
All right, well, let's talk about the vocals. Now, I reckon that around this era was the peak of David Coverdale's vocals. That wonderful, rich, bluesy tone. And I've always said that when he had that sinus operation in 1987 or prior to that, he was never the same. His vocals went higher. He was starting to sing a little bit more Tarzan, Robert Plant, and he lost a lot of that vocal, mid to lower vocal range. This is where I think he's at the peak, and I love it because his vocal tonality locks in with the material. It's just perfect. That beautiful, lower, rich, bluesy tone. What do you think? I think this is the peak of David Coverdale.
I agree. I think it's definitely his best vocals on these albums. I think the other thing is, I mean, he has got a bluesy voice, but I think he's got a really soulful voice, and you know, you could see him singing quite different material. You know, sort of almost going back to some of the soul songs of the early 70s, and he could sing those, I think, with no problem at all. So. And compared with a lot of the singers around this time, I mean, I would say most of the new wave of heavy metal singers were screechers. They were either Robert Plant or Rob Halford, that kind of vocals. There wasn't many, and in fact, off the top of my head, I can't think of any that had a vocal quality as good as Coverdale's.
Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City. That's a soul song. He's doing soul.
Yeah, definitely.
That's top 5 Whitesnake as far as I'm concerned. But you hear the Snakebite EP, he's singing soul.
Yeah.
And, you know, that could have been a whole different direction he could have taken his career. But he wanted it to be more hard rock, cock rock, go down that path. But that gives you a key to a direction that he could have taken easily.
He could have definitely done a Michael Bolton, I think.
Without the cheese.
Without the cheese, yeah. But the vocals and the look, a record company could easily have picked him up and done a Michael Bolton with him, I think.
Well, we're going in a tangent, but that's what I love about talking with you. Those first 2 solo albums, if they were hits, could have changed his career.
Could have, yeah.
North Winds and Whitesnake, because stylistically there was a lot of different genres on those albums.
He's definitely playing to an audience here, I think. He knew the Deep Purple audience. He knew the new wave of British heavy metal audience, and he lent into that, I think, and really in a really good way.
Well, it's a segue into the next 2 songs, and I'll talk about these next 2 songs as a package because stylistically they are very similar. Carry Your Load and Blind Man. Now, Blind Man is a remake of an earlier song off his solo albums. Again, this is another different direction, more imaginative in the lyricism, a song of ideas. There's a lot of soul in it. There's a lot of blues in it. It could have been, you know, another sort of stylistic road he could have gone down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this album, definitely, there is 2 styles on it. There's the heavy rock style and there's the blues rock style. And it meshes well, but they're quite distinct. And Carry Your Load and Blind Man are definitely in that blues rock style. I think these songs, the guitar really comes to the fore. You can hear both Mickey Moody and Bernie Marsden come forward. I think they're driven by really good, sort of beautiful guitar work. Um, but they're still good songs. I mean, Carry Your Load, I think it's got a really good chorus. And then you've got that slow build up on Blind Man, and just a fantastic guitar break when it gets to that. So quite different to the heavy rock songs on the album. But yeah, two very good, nice, enjoyable bluesy rock songs.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot of lyricism to it. It's not, it's much. To me, sounds more expansive, melodically,
Yeah.
arrangements, lyrics. It's a broader palette to some of the later songs, like that he was, like Slide It Into Me is very meat and potatoes, and it's an album that he wants to break into America. But this is where I think there's a bit of adventure. They're being a little bit
Well,
adventurous.
interestingly, these two songs were written by Coverdale by himself as well. So it makes you wonder whether this is where Coverdale's heart was, this kind of
Mm.
music, whereas the others had all of the, various band members co-writing. There was no influence by anybody else on this. It was purely just Coverdale.
Yep, yep. I just think it's probably some of the most adventurous Whitesnake tracks, those two.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You flip the album over, and then you've got Ain't Gonna Cry No More. Again, it's sort of in the ballpark of Carry Your Load and Blind Man, where you've got an acoustic start, and then it builds up. I wouldn't call it a power ballad, but there's a certain amount of energy, time signature changes, and quite a bit of adventure. What do you think of this song?
I think it sounds almost country with that guitar. But again, I like it. His vocals are good. And then after, it's got that kind of that acoustic sound. And then 2 minutes in, the rest of the band kick in. Because to start with, it's just the acoustic guitar and David. And then the band kick in after about 2 minutes, and it sort of raises it up. And I think it kicks off side two. I mean, funny you should say power ballad because I hadn't really thought of that. But yeah, I guess it's got all the hallmarks of what we would know to be a power ballad later, isn't it? As you say, it's got that energy and that slow build. And let's be honest, Coverdale was quite good at writing songs that were kind of power ballady, as we found with 87. So it's
Absolutely.
so it's not
Absolutely.
surprising he could. So yeah, maybe this was an early power ballad.
Yeah, it absolutely sounds like that. Now, Love Man goes back to a more traditional blues. I can imagine this is sort of like a Willie Dixon, Muddy Waters. Lyrics aside, I think that falls into definitely a very much a traditional blues type of song, and I dig it.
Yeah, I'd have to say it's probably my least favourite song on the album.
But it's the
But
most
yeah,
traditional
classic.
song on the album,
It
isn't it?
is. Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, just classic blues riff. Nice guitar lick, sort of running parallel with the riff. I think, as you say, typical Coverdale lyrics, typical
Yeah.
Coverdale vocals, really.
Yeah. I think it's a real loose vocal where he goes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. To me, it sounds like they're having a lot of fun. They're a bit loose, maybe slightly lubricated. You know,
Well, we'll come on to that, I think, with the next song a bit as well. I mean, I should say I don't think there's a bad song on the album. So the fact that this is my least favourite doesn't mean I think it's a bad song. I think it's decent. It sits in there. It fits in nicely. But I'm not a huge blues fan, and that's probably why it's my least favourite.
yeah. Well, the next song is actually my least favorite, Black and
I
Blue.
thought it might be.
Yeah, simply on the basis that you've got all this fake crowd noise where they're clapping and having a good old time, and they sound very lubricated. But to me, it sounds contrived because the song's not that great for them to, start clapping their hands and having having a rave up. it's a very boogie woogie type of song, but
it is.
kind of
And
forgettable.
I can't remember which show we spoke about it on, but you mentioned Mrs. Mills on the piano, and this kind of has that feel to it, doesn't it? That Mrs. Mills.
Mrs. Mills tinkling that slightly out of tune
Yeah.
keyboard. No, but John's playing really well.
Well, he does, and but you're right. They're trying to give the impression they're sat in the pub. Maybe there's a bit of a Chaz and Dave influence on it coming through.
Don't bring that up again, because I annoyed somebody who said, "Don't you dare pick on Chaz and Dave." So
right.
That's him. Blame him.
My fault for what? Yeah, teasing you over it. But I quite like it. I mean, it's got a decent boogie woogie guitar on it. I like the piano. I think it's a good enough song. Of course, is quite good, but it's a kind of a typical mid album or mid album side song. Doesn't set the world on fire, but pleasant enough, I think.
Yeah, a little bit filler. She's a Woman. I like this song a lot. I think it's a really nice closer. But the thing to me that really hooks me in is it's got this great keyboard line. It reminds me a little bit of Lido Shuffle, the old Boz Scaggs, diddle, 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 John Lord's going off. It's an interesting lyric because, how he's the sexist oaf, apparently, with all the Fleet Street press. This song is where he's just saying she's a woman. She bleeds. She feels. He's being very, I don't know, it's slightly pro-feminist, the lyrics of this song. What do you think?
Just a great big romantic, isn't he, at heart, let's be honest. Yeah. I think it's a good epic song to finish I don't mean epic as in epic limits, but the way it builds and it's a slow start with just him and the David and the guitar. Then the band kind of kicks in. At that point it becomes a really good rocker. But what I like most about it is like they're throwing everything in there, including the kitchen sink at the end, as you say, with the keyboards and everything. You really hear Ian Pace on the drums coming in with the fills. The whole thing lifts up, and it's just a great way to finish the album, I think.
Yeah, but to me, John Lord's keyboard lines just make it, and he's definitely an asset to this band. The way that John slots in this period is that he's not the right in your face like he was in Purple, which he was like the second rhythm player. He just does keyboard padding, adds his lines, and it just adds textures, but it makes all the songs so much better. I think the band would have been impoverished without him. He definitely was the X factor as far as I'm concerned, John Lord, with this band. All right, so that is Ready and Willing.
So just quickly, before we move off, one thing we haven't spoken about is the production, Martin Birch's production. Which I think
it's a step up.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think even today it sounds a decent production on it. It doesn't sound particularly dated. He gets the best out of everybody. It's not. It's funny, really, because listening to it now, I mean, back in the day, I thought this was a really heavy album, but now I don't think it sounds overly heavy. It just sounds like a really good rock album, and I think the production captures that sort of rock feel as opposed to a heavy rock feel. So you haven't got the guitars turned up too much. They're kind of just right in the mix, I think. So yeah, I think he does a decent on both these albums. I think he does a good production job.
Yeah, well, I think his production work on Trouble and Love Hunter, which was a step up, was a little bit subpar because the sound of both those albums sound dead bat. Really, it's kind of a dead sound. And I don't know if it's the drumming and the rhythm section, but it just doesn't sound live. But this album, they're starting to capture the live sound of Whitesnake. I don't think it's perfect because you listen to Live in the Heart of the City. That is Whitesnake. pops out of the
Yeah.
speakers. So still a long way to go. But this album started to sound more organic and live and fresh. So let's talk about Come and Get It. Interesting album cover, Parish. Look at that snake.
Yeah. Well, that was very controversial at the time.
Absolutely. And you had that. And I've got the an original. I'll share this with you. The original mail order.
Ah, well done. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually collect Whitesnake T-shirts. So if you ever see it at a market, a flea market, a Whitesnake, come and get it. Let me know.
Oh, okay.
I'd love to
I'll
see
let you
it.
know.
I've always loved the design of the Whitesnake, come and get it. So love to have that T-shirt. And very similar to the last album where you've got these black and white silhouette shots and lyric sheets. So is this Ready and Willing Part 2, or is it its own self-entity? We shall see. So side one starts off with Come and Get It. Now, I love this song, but I have it in the back of my head, and maybe this is like a fantasy. I'd love if there was some Stax horns or brass. Just give it a little bit of oomph. I think it'd be even a better song. I don't know.
Never thought about it, really.
Yeah. So this is, he comes out of the blocks on this song and he says, come and get it. This is me. This is my persona. Take it or leave it. This is really, it's a mission statement song, isn't it, really?
It is. And got to bear in mind, at this point, he was really on a high. So Ready and Willing put him back at the top. He was filling out big, he would tour the UK and he was certainly filling out big sort of theatres. He wasn't quite at arena status, but then not many bands played the arenas, to be honest. So he could fill out 3 or 4 nights at Hammersmith Odeon easily.
But he was knocking on the door, wasn't he? He was probably knocking on the door of the O2 or those sides.
Well, it would have been Wembley Arena would have been the next step. And I think the problem is Hammersmith Odeon is about 3,500 and Wembley Arena is about 15,000. And I think it was probably just too big a step up for him to be able to go up to that kind of 15,000. There wasn't many bands that could fill out Wembley Arena back then. Queen, I remember seeing Queen around this time at Wembley Arena. Even they didn't fill it out. So I think that's why he would do Hammersmith Odeon 3 or 4 nights and be guaranteed to sell it out. Partly because people like me would go more than one night, so he was guaranteed to get the returning fans. But he was on an absolute high when this came out, and you can just hear that confidence with him and the band throughout the album. And as you say, particularly with this song, I mean, this is him telling us that he's on top. He's a rock star. So yeah, brilliant. Again, another great opening track on an album. Fantastic riff. Love the chorus. Brilliant classic Whitesnake song. I mean, something we didn't mention on the last one, and it carries through here. He's got a problem with D's on and, doesn't he? He keeps dropping the D. Come and get it, or ready and willing. He likes to abbreviate. Maybe he's a closet Slade fan and he likes to misspell his songs. I don't know.
Well, Reed Little was very critical of the spelling on the albums when we did the Best and Worst of show. So I know you haven't watched that show yet, but
I haven't yet. No, I didn't want to spoil this.
A big razz. What's the heroes of the song? I think it's Neil Murray and the drumming. The drumming swings. There's not a lot of instrumentation. It's more of it's more of a feel piece, and that's why I was thinking, if I wanted to tinker away like a mad scientist, I'd add a horn section and kind of make it like a Stax number. I've always had it in my head. I'd love to have a horn section on this opening track. But Pacey's drumming is fantastic on this album. He absolutely swings. It's got so much groove. And yeah, I think that was the best thing that one of the most important key changes in Whitesnake is when David Duckdale, who was a very crisp drummer, and they brought Ian Pace in. It just lifted the band immediately.
I think also the chemistry, isn't it? I mean, you can tell this is a band at this point that really enjoy playing together. They're having a lot of fun. And you know, I mean, you could say that maybe even David Coverdale and what I'm about to say, but you can almost say that this was a band comprising of almost journeymen. People have been in around a lot of bands, done well, but hadn't been the focus in the bands that they were in as much. And then all of a sudden, it's all gelled, and they've become. I mean, even Deep Purple, I think, played to the rock audience, but were not thought of as a mainstream band back in the early 70s. They were a rock band, a heavy rock band, and therefore the heavy rock audience. And I think at this point, Whitesnake had almost become part of the mainstream. They were having hit singles as well as hit albums. People who were coming, I mentioned earlier about the number of women coming to the concerts. They were getting a lot of non-rock fans coming to their audience. They were part that it was almost like they'd made it in a way that these musicians hadn't before, and maybe never thought they would, I think. And you can just tell they're having a huge amount of fun doing it, I think, and they certainly were when you saw them. You know, great fun.
Well, that's an interesting testimony, because I always was of the understanding that it was predominantly male audience, but you were there.
Yeah.
In the day.
Yeah,
so
Whitesnake was the exception.
There you go. There you go. All right, next song of the album, Hot Stuff. This is another one where Neil Murray and Ian Pace seem to be in lockstep with each other, and it's just such a groove. I'm repeating this word again and again, but this song absolutely swings, and it's got a really catchy riff. And David Coverdale's doing that lower voice, that deep, rich, bluesy voice, and makes it compelling. I think it's a crack of the second track. What do you think of this one?
I just think it continues in the same vein as Come and Get It, really. It's got a similar sound to it, similar. It's almost like part two of that song. I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. It's got the same feel, probably for the reasons you've just said, but it's got the same feel, same sort of the same tempo. Yeah, I think it's a great 1-2 openers for the album. Really good.
Yep, absolutely. Now, Don't Break My Heart Again is like a cousin to Fool for Your Loving, and in some ways, I think it even is better. Again, it's David pouring out his heart over a lyric. He sells the song. It sounds compelling. I believe it, and it's the arrangement of this song is just so beautifully put together. The band is just lockstepped in. They're in synergy, and I can easily understand why this was a bit of a hit. What do you think of this song?
I love it. Another classic. The vocals are good. The guitars are good. The organ comes through on this one, doesn't it? And
yes,
is really good. I love the
right balance, isn't it? It's at the right balance.
Exactly, yeah. And then I think the pre-chorus. In fact, I think the pre-chorus is better than the chorus. I mean, I like the chorus, but I think the way that builds through the pre-chorus is really good. And then the guitar work is fantastic on it. So another absolute classic Whitesnake song, which could have been a hit in the States, I think, if they'd done an '87 remix of it.
Maybe. I've got a lot of bootlegs of Whitesnake, and they don't nail this song live. It seems a bit heavy. And I don't know why, because, well, I do know why. I think that Birch has the right mix, because the keyboard lines in this song are very subtle. They're not too heavy, and the bass and the drums are just at the right mix. But when they do it live, it just doesn't seem to be the same. It seems a little bit heavy-handed. And it was in the song set for a while, but it got dropped. And I think, there are some songs that work and some don't. But for whatever reason, this song doesn't work. Fool for Your Loving works, but this song doesn't work. And my theory is they're playing, they can't sort of get the refined subtleties of what it sounds like in the studio live. You've probably seen this song played live?
Yeah, and I don't particularly recall it being a problem. I mean, it's true to say they were always heavier live than on record. And I think that was partly just because they ramped everything up. The amps were ramped right up, and the audience they were playing to. So a good example of that is if you go back to 80-81, who were the two first bands that headlined Donington? It was Rainbow and Whitesnake. So Coverdale was always conscious, I think, of the fan base that put him there. And therefore they were always a heavier band live. And maybe that's one of the reasons why songs like this didn't translate live, because as you say, it was a bit more subtle, maybe a bit more commercial in its sound, and it just didn't kind of come across. But I don't particularly remember, I have to say, when I saw them. But then I would have just been stood there singing along, so I probably wouldn't have realised anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. But I've got a ton of bootlegs, and that's the only song they don't seem to be able to nail. It's either too fast or a little bit too heavy. Now, the next song is, I think it's brilliant. This is some of David Coverdale's most heartfelt lyrics. His singing is wonderful. People don't talk about this. This is such an underrated song. Lonely Days, Lonely Nights. When he does that lyric, I've been waiting my whole life for things to turn out right. Maybe I got the lyrics slightly wrong. Beautiful. Brilliant. Hairs on the back of my head to stand on end.
And the guitar, the guitar I think is fantastic on it as well. So I think in some ways it's a bit out of pace with the rest of the album. I mean, I never thought. I mean, as I said before we came on, I tried to listen to this with sort of fresh ears, and listening to the album now, trying to critique it in some ways. This song sounds a little bit out of context with the rest of the album, but there's no denying it's such a fantastic song. And as I say, the guitar playing is great. The vocal, his vocals are fantastic. It's a really good song. So yeah, like you, I think it's great, and probably it's all kind of got lost, hasn't it? It's got forgotten in the midst of time, really.
It has, and it's a bit of a slow burn song. You listen to the guitar line. Bernie Marsden's licks in the song are beautiful. The tonality, that Gibson Les Paul, and he's just doing these little subtle licks all the way through it, and interweaving with DC, just singing his ass off. But there's just some. I don't know. It's just always emotionally got me right there, this song, for some reason. And I've lived with this album since, I got it almost in the day in 82. Long time. But I've always found this song to really affect me. And I think it's got some of DC's most heartfelt lyrics. And he's just really, it sounds like he's singing for his life. But it just doesn't get discussed. It's a real deep, deep cut. So if I ever wanted to put a wish list of a concert list together, I'd put this in, but it'd be regarded as a deep cut.
I'd be interested to hear what you say when you did your favorite and least favorites from this album. Now.
Oh, it wasn't my favorite.
Oh, right.
There's another one that I put above this, but I just think it is such a good song, this one. Then we have a little bit of boogie woogie, a little bit of a throwaway, but I like it because it's just got David's humor.
I think it's almost like a signature song, isn't it? Even the title, "Wine, Women, and Song," kind of makes you think of David Coverdale.
You can kiss my ass, he's saying
Yeah,
the Fleet Street Press. Again, it's a mission statement. It's bravado. It's him saying, you say all these things, but I don't care. I'm me, and you're you.
round the piano boogie beginning as well, and then I think David's having a lot of fun, tongue in his cheek, singing it. I think the riff's good. It's almost southern rock, I think, in its feel.
Maybe Quo. I've always
Maybe Quo, yeah.
often thought that Quo could do this.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just a lot of fun to finish side one with. I think
absolutely. It's like a palate cleanser because Lonely Days, Lonely Nights is like the emotional ringer. So let's just finish the side off with a little bit of a palate cleanser.
And I think that's why I think that Lonely Days, Lonely Nights kind of feels out of place, because you've got Come and Get It, Hot Stuff, Don't Break My Heart Again, which all sound classic Whitesnake. And then you've got Wine, Women and Song, which has got that, again, is kind of classic Whitesnake with David Coverdale's humour and everything. So you've got this, as you say, very emotional song sort of sandwiched in the middle.
I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change the song list. I'd be the
No. Well, I've lived with it for too long to. Yeah. I've lived with it for too long to want to change anything.
All right, so we flip over to the first track on side 2, Child of Babylon. Now, there's a lot of punters. I've done a few Whitesnake shows on the channel that put up their hand and say, this is the song on the album. This is the epic one. This is my favorite. What do you think of this? I think this has got this is an epic track, isn't it?
It's definitely epic. Very atmospheric start. It's probably a bit Deep Purpley, I think, in the way it builds, and but again, very Whitesnake, because it's a mid-paced bluesy song, isn't it, when it gets going? Yeah, again, very good. Good way of starting side 2. Shows another side to the band. Came across live well. I remember them playing it, certainly on the tour. Came across well live. Yeah, a very good song, but a bit different, I think, for Whitesnake.
It's the heaviest song on the album. It's probably the closest to hard rock, heavy metal, because it's got that feel, because the climax of the song is that guitar solo. Pacey's drumming is just phenomenal. It's a top-notch song. And then the next one,
but the vocals are very strong in it as well, I think. I mean, to be fair, you could say that across the whole album, but I think his vocals are really strong, which is another facet to the song, in my view.
And it follows another theme of David Coverdale with a lot of his lyrics, like he's the black sheep of the family. He was born on the wrong star sign, and it goes back to Burn, doesn't it? It's a familiar theme, but it's a lot of drama. So because most of the songs of this album are of the heart, but this one is slightly a bit swords and sorcery, goes into something a little bit different.
Exactly. Well, and I think that's probably why I think it's a bit Deep Purple-like, because it's a little bit different. It's not typical Coverdale lyrics, is it?
Yeah, well, yeah. It's probably remembering when Richie tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Come on, I've got to come up with another one."
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right.
Would I Lie to You? This is a bit of a cheeky song. It's got a little bit of funk, bit of groove to it. What do you think of this one?
Well, this was a single. From memory, it was played a lot on the radio. So yeah, very commercial. I love it. It's kind of a classic Whitesnake song. It's a bit throwaway, I suppose, compared with some of the, particularly after the song that we've just spoken about. But yeah, I just think it's, again, a lot of fun.
The lyrics were different on the single edit too.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you mentioned it, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, you're right. It was.
So this would be like Sweet Talker, where the lyrics are, he's pushing it out there. Yeah, there's one or two songs where he's, putting the finger up. It's like a
Yeah.
reflex action. He just can't help himself.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think of it?
I like it, but I don't think it's the strongest song on the album.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like all the songs on this album, but if I had to rank it, this would probably be the least one that I gravitate to. But yeah, it's fine. All right, the next one is Girl. So Lordy's a little bit more up in the mix, and he's got that sort of funky keyboard. And this pushes along. Now, David sort of uh, was saying that this song he wrote about his daughter. He said to all the clever dicks in the audience and all the Fleet Street press, this was actually I wrote about my daughter.
Yeah.
Girl.
Well, yeah, I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me because I think it's not the song you'd expect it to be. Um, you either expect it to be a ballad with the title like Girl, or you expect it to be one of his tongue-in-cheek um, sort of sexist type songs. And I think this isn't either of those. And I think it kind of a bit surprising, really. And I think it's got a good riff. I think it's mid-paced rocker, and I like it a lot. I think it's a good song. And as I say, maybe a bit different to what I was expecting.
Yeah, the lyrics are obviously he's besotted. And,
Yeah,
he's besotted by the girl in the as the main character of the song, and it centers around that. And yeah, I think he's very playful in his vocal lines on this one. He's having a lot of fun. And I agree with you. I don't think it's what you expect. It throws you a little bit off
mm.
kilter, but in a good way. All right. Then it goes into Hit and Run, AN, no AND. This is another corker. Now, I actually think this is almost very similar to Hot Stuff. There's a lot of synergy when you look at the tracks on side one and side two. There's like mirror images and similarities between songs on side one and side two. And I would always couple Hit and Run with Hot Stuff. It's a bit of a band workout where it's a bit of a hard rocker, and Pacey's there and doing his real rhythm lines, and it's got a bit of groove. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it fits in with the sound of the album really well. It's a great rock song. There was quite a few songs called Hit and Run about at this time, so a bit generic, I think, in its title. But yeah, as you say, it fits in really well. I really like it, and I almost think it should have been the album closer. I know we said earlier we wouldn't move things around, but I always thought it was a great way to finish an album because it's just that great up tempo bit, really.
Yeah, I like the vocoder. I think that's
Yeah,
Bernie Marsden doing that. Adds a little bit of oomph, and yeah, it's a very infectious riff. Now, this should be in their song set. Again, this is another one I think may have been briefly in their song set and they dropped it.
yeah, it certainly wasn't. I can't remember if it was in the set when they toured for this album, but I don't recall ever seeing it live. So
Yep, yep.
um, yeah, but you're right. It would be it would have been a good song for them to do live on a regular basis.
And then you finish off with it's sort of like a power ballad. Till the Day I Die starts off like an acoustic song, builds up, builds up. This is one of my favorite songs on the album. I think it's a great album closer, and it's just a lyric about he'll love until the day he dies. So he's just putting
Yeah,
his heart on the line, and he finishes it up. So what do you think about this song?
yeah, I like it a lot. I think again, it's a bit country the way it starts. It starts fairly slow, doesn't it? And then kicks in,
Mm.
and I think it's a really good song. Um, again, almost classic David Coverdale lyrics. With we said earlier, he's a bit of an old romantic at heart, and I think that comes through on this song. But yeah, a good song. I always like albums finishing with a rocker, so maybe that's why I felt they could flip this and hit and run over. But actually, as you say, it's actually a good album closer in that it builds nicely towards the end, and certainly leaves you wanting more and takes you to flip it back over to start a game, which is always a good sign of an album closer, I think, when it makes you want to just turn it over and listen to the album again. So
I think that's a Coverdale lyric, wanting more.
yeah, probably.
I was so besotted with this song. I used to turn the volume up in the inner groove and just listen to the outro because, David Coverdale does this wonderful little Tarzan yelp at the end, right at the end of it. I just wanted more, and I would flip it over. A quick shout out on Pacey's drumming. I know I keep on saying, but his hi-hat work on this, it's very subtle, but it's he's like the most valuable player on this song. It just so much groove. There was a lot of criticism. What is this? Deep Purple coming back together again? And I think
Well, I would definitely remember that. At the time, people were accusing him of putting together Purple without Richie Blackmore, but I think it's unfair because I think generally they don't sound too much like Purple.
no.
And he wasn't the only one, was he? That brought ex Deep Purple members into his band. I mean, others did that.
No. And Richie with Roger, and
yeah,
there you go. So this album went to number 2, pipped at the post by Adam and the Ants, if only. But I think this was the biggest selling album.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
So probably 1987 in the UK is the biggest seller to this day, but this would probably be number 2.
Yeah, it's certainly their signature album for those early days, I would say.
Absolutely.
The kind of their peak.
Okay, Parish. So there you have it. We've got done 2 albums. That was a lot of fun. Who is your winner for the album battle between Ready and Willing and Come and Get It?
This is so hard, isn't it? I think I'm going to give it to Ready and Willing. But I was thinking about this yesterday, and as I was listening to the albums, it was whichever album I was listening to was going to be my choice, and then I'd go on to the other album and I was thinking, maybe not, maybe I'll go with this. But I think I'll go with Ready and Willing. And just because I love Fall for Your Loving. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's great songs across both albums. But if I was to pick a Whitesnake song that to me encapsulates Whitesnake, I would say it's Fall for Your Loving. So for that reason, and I think I'll give it to Ready and Willing. But it could, I think they're both 10 out of 10 albums, so it really is very difficult to choose.
My pick is this one. This is probably one of my favorite albums of all time. I've played it to death. I must have played this album thousands of times. I love it. If David Coverdale's done a fart on the album, I've heard it. I've just lived with this album forever. But Ready and Willing is a mighty fine album. That would be closely behind. Incidentally, Parish, what's your favorite Whitesnake album out of the whole catalogue? Would that be Ready and Willing, or is there another one that you'd probably champion ahead of that?
I think
I put you on the spot, haven't I?
Yeah, you have. And I've always said that's my favourite album. So, Twitter, I did a ranking, sort of top 5, and that was the one I put top. And it's because it's got, to me, the definitive version of Here I Go Again. Crying in the Rain, I think, is fantastic. In fact, I think every song on the album is brilliant. So I'd say that one. But the reason I paused when you asked me is because I've lived with these two over the last week, listening to it constantly. That I don't know. Maybe it's Ready and Willing. So I'm going to have to go back and listen to that now this week. But yeah, I'll stick with this. I'll stick with this as being my favourite for now. Yeah, so I think it is that one, which to me is the end of that classic run of Whitesnake albums.
Fair enough. No, that's a mighty fine album, and that was the end of the classic lineup.
It was.
Not that you would know when you look at that album. There's no credits.
No, exactly.
Even on the inner sleeve, it doesn't tell you who's playing on the album. Very mysterious. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Parish of Rock. So that is.
You mentioned earlier about having the merchandise sheet. I've got, it's funny which ones you keep and which ones you don't, isn't it? So
yeah. If you fill it in and send it, you might finally get it.
Yeah, I wonder if I'll get a T-shirt for $5.
Absolutely. And I'm wearing my Donington Monsters of Rock.
Oh yeah, well done. Yeah,
1980. There you go. What a lineup.
Yeah, I was there. I saw that. Yeah.
Were they good?
No, brilliant. Yeah.
Diamond Head.
Yeah.
Dio. ZZ Top. Whitesnake.
Yeah, and ZZ Top were just because ZZ Top were not a big act in the UK and it was just about this time that they broke through with Eliminator and those videos. And I think they were put on the when they sort of did the order of bands. I think they were more popular. By the time that the concert came around, they were more popular than because what happened was when they had Live Aid between bands on Live Aid, the BBC were showing videos, and they showed the 3 videos of Sharp Dressed Man, Give Me All Your Loving, and Legs, and it was those videos in that with everybody pretty much watching Live Aid just shot them through the stratosphere in the UK, pushed the album. So by the time August came round, they were much bigger band than they were when they were first, when the lineup was first announced. So there was a huge interest in them. So and they were great, but the thing about Whitesnake is, in a live environment, there's almost nobody better. So as good as somebody like ZZ Top were, and they were really good, they wouldn't have been able to top Whitesnake.
Yeah. What about the year where it was the Whitesnake Commandos and they supported AC/DC were the headliners, and this was the lineup of Mel Galley, Mick Moody, Colin Bomber Hodgkinson, and Cozy Powell. And I've got the video, VHS, and a bootleg DVD. I'm telling you that David Coverdale is very much into archiving, and mate, just get this video out, remaster it. Somebody's got the master tapes, but it needs to get out. It's a sensational live performance.
Yeah.
And they were Guilty of Love was the fresh single of this. So this is the going into the studio and doing the UK version of Slide It In. But they were on fire. Did you go to that concert, the Kamado?
I did, and it was a surprise that they would have had them opening. I mean, AC/DC were huge, so it was no surprise that AC/DC were headlining. But at that time, that there wasn't that many artists that could headline Donington. So for them not to have Whitesnake as a headliner was a surprise, really. But yeah, they were
really,
good.
really good.
Yeah.
And Cozy did the 1812 Overture, and
Yeah.
even though you wouldn't know it on the VHS because they just cut the drum solo, but somebody's got the master tape somewhere.
You're taking me back there.
Yeah, get it out. And that would be really good. But they played Donington a few times.
They did.
There's got to be some live material. I've also read stories where there were cameras that have been to film some certain Hammersmith Odeon gigs around 1980. So they're probably sitting in some vault somewhere. Just needs to get the remaster treatment. I would love to see that footage come out. So,
and a lot of those concerts were also were recorded for the Friday Rock show as well. So there'll definitely be audio tapes.
Yep.
Of those, not just Whitesnake, but it seemed to me every time I went to Hammersmith Odeon, there would be some announcement that it was being recorded for the Friday Rock show and it would be out that Friday. So definitely, I'm almost certain there'd be some really good footage. Well, not footage, but recordings of some of these Hammersmith Odeon gigs.
Live in the Heart of the City is a truncated version of a full Whitesnake show. So I've seen bootlegs of that. There you go.
I like showing this off because it's signed by the band. So
that was
priceless. Apart from David Coverdale.
No DC.
So that was no DC. We were hanging about at the back of Hammersmith Odeon. They used to put all the trucks there to, when at the end of the tour. So let's say he played there 3 nights, and this would have been the last night. So we'd always go back round the back to see if we could get anything signed. And they all came out and chatted and signed, except for David Coverdale, which was a bit of a shame. But I got all the others. So
he was probably fighting Richie.
I suspect
you heard the famous fight between Richie and
I suspect he was doing things that we shouldn't be talking about on YouTube.
And on that note, thank you very much, Parish. It's been wonderful. Great talking about these 2 of our favorite albums.
Yeah, so, brilliant.
We like them both. So there you go. Folks, tell us what your favorite Whitesnake album is. Is it Ready and Willing? Is it Come and Get It? Favorite tracks? We love reading your comments. Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. We're building a community. And also check out The Contrarians and the various other shows that the Parish of Rock is on. He's around and provides some really insightful commentary. But one thing's for sure, me and Parish are going to be doing some more things on rock in 2025. We will catch you soon and all the best. Cheers.
Thanks. See you.